Tuesday, 26th of May. Any apologies?
Chair, apologies from Councillor Baxter, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Coventry and Councillor Thompson.
Order of business?
Is as printed in the agenda, Chair.
And any declarations of interest? That takes us on to item 4, minutes of the meeting of the 21st of April. Are there any comments? I'll take these as noted then. Item 5, major applications currently being assessed and other developments at pre-application consultation stage for noting. Oh. What? Are we all going to settle down now? Right, item 5 for noting. Which takes on item 6, appeals and local review body decisions, also for noting. Which now takes on to item 7E, erection of a proposed primary school and nursery and sports pitch at Roslin. And Joyce will speak on that.
Yep, the report relates to a pre-application consultation for the new primary school, nursery and sports pitch in Roslin. The proposal envisages the erection of the new facilities adjacent to the existing, and a provisional assessment against policy supports the proposal in principle, as its current use is for education and related open space sports facilities.
Thank you. The recommendations are that we accept the provisional planning provisions set out in the report. Anyone any comments? Which takes on to 7B.
This is a pre-application consultation for Lonehead community facilities. There are 2 related pre-application consultations in this report. The first is for the erection of community facilities, including a primary school, nursery provision, early years wraparound care, a library and health centre, and the second part of the PAC relates to the site of existing facilities in Lonehead. It envisages the development of the site of the to-be demolished Paradise Primary School, nursery, community learning centre, library and health centre, and the site's redevelopment for residential purposes. A provisional assessment of the proposal against policy supports the scheme in principle.
Andrew?
Yeah, can I just comment about 1.1, and it mentions the wraparound care facility. Could we add in a breakfast club, after school club and community nursery? There has been some comment in the local community that hasn't been mentioned.
I've already got a hold of the officers that are obviously promoting the site, and as far as they're concerned, the wording on there actually covers what Andrew's saying. I've also responded back to the person that raised the subject, and they were quite okay with it, with the wording staying the same. I did reply to all, so you should have got it, but if you had been in earlier, you might have seen it.
Okay, thanks very much. So we accept the recommendations. This is on to item 7C.
This is a third pre-application consultation report related to proposed residential development at land to the west of the cottage at Harden Green. The relevant policies in relation to this site in the 2008 Midlothian Local Plan relate to the protection of the countryside and the protection of the green belt. A provisional assessment shows that the proposal would be contrary to both of these policies. In addition, at its meeting on the 16th of December last year, the Council approved the Midlothian Local Development Plan proposed plan, and the proposed plan does not include this site as a future development site, and therefore the proposed residential development would be contrary to the Council's emerging Midlothian local development plan.
Are we happy to accept the recommendations? Okay.
Could I just ask, who's the developer there?
Avent Homes, Peter. Is it A-V-A-N-T? Okay. Did you hear that, Peter? Avent Homes are the builders.
The point I'm trying to make is I have had an enormous complaint about a site in my ward where the developer has left something in a terrible state, and the planners then said it was very poor site management. And I feel in the end of the day it's so crucial that we deal with the right developers, because there's an enormous demand for housing in Midlothian, and if we have developers that are not doing a particularly good job in one side of Midlothian, then that should be taken into account, and it would be helpful if we could always find out exactly who the developers are.
Okay, thanks, Peter. You mentioned that, Michael? Okay.
Thanks, Convener. I was really a question for you, Chair, possibly all the officers. Have we had any comments yet? I've had from organisations within the community in this area. I've had a number of independent comments from a number of local residents with their concerns about the Greenbelt being impacted.
To date, Chair, just looking across at the officer, we've not had any particular comment in relation to this site from individuals. It is obviously just a pre-application consultation at the point as and when someone may come forward on the back of that with a planning application. Then obviously we begin to see whatever comments people had, because it would be neighbour notified and advertised as normal.
That takes us on to item 8A.
This is a proposal for the erection of 199 dwelling houses and 12 flatted dwellings, the formation of access roads, car parking and associated works at Harveston Farm at Gorebridge. The houses are all two-storey on the site with pitched roofs, and the flatted dwellings are contained within a three-storey block which has a hipped roof. The site includes a central area of open space with a play area, and the houses are sited around the open space facing onto it. The area of improved quality includes the houses around the area of open space and the three-storey flatted block. It's proposed that finishes in the area of improved quality are restricted to slate for roofs and wet dash render for walls. 5 letters of representation have been received in relation to the application. Both Muirfoot Community Council and Gorebridge Community Council have objected to the application.
Any comments, anyone? Okay, we've got that, Peter?
I mean, it's a huge development, and I am disappointed that they are not coming forward with more affordable homes. Is there any way that we could twist their arm a little?
The site was allocated in the 2003 local plan, and because of that, the standard for, or the amount of affordable housing is restricted to between 5 and 10%. So whereas now, if a development site came forward, we'd be looking for 25% affordable housing, it's restricted in this case.
But we quote here that between 11 and 19, and they suggest 12. Sorry, but on page 47.8 30, they 11 to 21, and the applicant affordable 12. Well, that is at the bottom end of the requirements, so I feel, surely we could do better.
Okay, Peter, we'll take that on board, all right, and get back to you. Sorry?
Chair, I mean the situation is with the affordable housing policy, as Joyce Leamoth just explained, is that this is based on the 2003 local plan. There is a negotiation which takes place within the terms of the policies that we have. The proposal from the applicants is as set out in the report. We consider, from an officer point of view, in terms of recommendations, that seems to be a reasonable basis for taking forward this site. Obviously, it's for members, if they feel that is insufficient, then we can seek to try and discuss further with the applicants. But in terms of the recommendation, that seems to be in line with the terms of the policy, which is set out.
So, as it stands, Peter, it's 12 houses.
So, given that our kind of discussions form the kind of minute of today's meeting, and then you go back and speak with them, presumably the sort of stronger a voice we speak saying, look, affordable housing on this site matters to us, the more empowered you are to go back to the developers and say, look, the elected members made a big deal about affordable housing. I mean, I share Peter's concerns.
Chair, yes, absolutely. If the view of the committee, I mean, this is simply a scheme that's come forward for members to look at. If the members' view as the planning authority is that they've considered that the level of affordable housing being shown is insufficient, or is a matter which the officer should take back, then absolutely we can take that back to the developers as part of the discussion with them. If that's the settled view of the committee, then happy to take that back as officers to talk to the developers. How you make a decision on this now is whether you're willing to take a decision today in terms of approving the application subject to the officers having further discussions is one thing. If there's a concern that that's perhaps taking things too far, it's perfectly reasonable for the committee to continue the application on the matter of affordable housing being, in the committee's view, insufficient.
So what's the view of the committee then? Do you want...
Well, given that the developers' proposals meet the criteria as they were then, I thought we'd been pretty dodgy ground to try and turn it down or not to approve it today.
Well, whereas given it's a range, though, and as Peter points out, what they've originally offered is at the bottom end of the range. Certainly my view is that it's insufficient, and that we ought to go back to them and ask them to improve their position within that range, which is the policy. I think it's insufficient.
So what's the view of the committee? You just we'll go back and ask them to give us another offer?
Chair, if that's the settled view of the committee on this, then I would recommend that the applications continued to the next meeting of the committee, and the officers will, myself and the officers will go back to the applicants with a view to relaying that and seeking a higher level of affordable housing provision.
Could we put a figure on that then? We don't want to be coming back again. No?
I recommend, I mean, I understand that, if I understand the Councillor's point correctly, is that there's an acceptance that the policy is based on 2003 and the limitations of that, and therefore we need to work within that, but clearly it needs to be towards the higher end of that scale. Is that reasonable? Right, okay, we can work with that.
That takes us on to item 8B.
This proposal is for the erection of 13 flatted dwellings and a terrace of 5 dwelling houses at the corner of Bryans Road and Morris Road in Newton Grange. The building on the corner of the site containing the flats fronts the road and is in the main 3 stories in height with a flat roof. A small part of the building adjacent to Brian's farmhouse is 2 stories in height. The 5 terrace dwelling houses are accessed via a pend in the flatted buildings. The terrace is 2 stories in height with accommodation in the pitched roof. The flatted building is of contemporary design and is finished with facing brick, some timber and metal cladding. The terrace houses are traditional in form and finished with mainly smooth render and brick walls. 62 letters of objection have been received, and Newton Grange Community Council have objected to the proposal.
Would it be helpful to the committee if I circulated these larger scale plans before I make any contribution? Because I did call the application in. Have the week and pass them on.
We'll just wait a couple of minutes so everybody has a look. Okay, everyone's seen the plans? Back to you, Brian.
Yeah, I called this into planning committee because I was dismayed to see this type of structure coming to this corner. The various reasons I called it in. The first one was the height and the scale of the development. It is a 3-storey building, and the 3-storey part of the flats is at the closest part to the corner, at the highest part of the contours on the actual site. And it's in a very prominent position. So it's on the main bus route, Newton Grange to Mayfield, and it will be very dominating, and it'll have a very dominating effect on the area of Morris Road and Brian's Road. Also, the other properties in the area, the immediate area, are also 2-storey in height. You know, Newton Grange has got a lot of 4 in a block kind of housing. You know, 2-storey positions. The farmhouse, 2-storey, Brian's farmhouse next door, and other buildings smaller, like the police station, the other side of it. It is a flat roof structure. I'm not keen on flat roof structures because I keep thinking they've got a certain lifeline, to flat roof structures. And I also think that's not in keeping with Newton Grange flat roof structures. We didn't really have that kind of overbearing on any of the properties in Newton Grange. The character and the form. The flats would be out of character and the buildings in the surrounding area, so that is also a planning condition. Although brick is an important building material, elsewhere in Newton Grange, there's little sign in close proximity to this application site. The DP2 and 5A group-in buildings, new housing should relate well in terms of scale, angle and alignment of roof pitch, choice of finishing materials and detailing. That is all part of the appearance of the building that I have concerns with. On the traffic implications, I think we've got traffic implications on the wheelie bins. The number of wheelie bins that will be in this site, that will be put at the curbside, that will put out on Morris Road, because the vehicle will not be able to, the cleansing vehicle will not be able to access the pend due to the height of the pend. So all the wheelie bins will have to be out on the Morris Road. You'll know it's the route to school for many, and the safe route to school will have good recommendations on the junction nearby, you know, where the traffic lights, free phase lights. But the emergency access from the police station is obviously a concern, or shall we say egress. Sometimes that police station will need to put that blue light on and leave, and it will need good sight lines to come straight out into Morris Road. We refused a plan application before for nearby for a hot food takeaway van because of the slow-moving lorries and the sight lines that was concerned. I think this will add to the problems of the sight lines actually on Morris Road, because even coming out the pend from these houses, you still don't have a sight line to see traffic, you know, both ways. And visitor traffic will probably not access the pend. They'll probably park on Morris Road to access the flats and the housing on this site. And then I think there's insignificant parking actually on the site. When you talk about 1.5 parking spaces per car, yes, we've met that criteria. You know, so we've met the compliance, but that's only based on certain sizes of properties. The 4-bedroom houses need more parking spaces to be allocated to it. So then there's a lack of parking spaces within the application. I've got a few suggestions that maybe we could conclude with, because I'm not against a development in this area per se. You know, so I'm not going to object to this, but when you can consider that there is, shall we say, there's no social housing on this site. I mean, over 14. I mean, I think you know there's other reasons that is in planning on this. But if we could have pushed the flats further back from the junction. I think the highest part of the structure should be at the lowest part of the site. But that's the less or if we can't push it further back, then let's make it at least less dominating, and so that a more amenity space can be created. The access to the amenity space at the front here on the Bryans Road is via this property's window, a large window on the ground floor flat, you know, and there's no actually a designated footpath into what we'd call the amenity space, the green area on this site. But if we could get it reduced to 2-storey and put a pitched roof on it instead of a flat roof, and we could reduce the terraced houses from 5 to 4, that would meet with the garden criteria, because the 12.5 metre for terraced housing at the back, the strips, we're not meeting that because they've taken away some of that space to make access pass into for the given back gardens. So if you look at the detail in the plan on that, you can see only 2 of the gardens, the terraced housing, complies with it. There's a lot of other good points that planning officers have put in here. You'd have to have the coal legacy implications looked at. You'd have to have the archaeological site deemed, because the interest in from the historical types is on the former use of that site by the monks of Newbattle as a possible burial ground. So they'd have to, I mean, that's all in the plan applications conditions anyway, and I'd like to enforce or emphasise those conditions would have to be done independently on the archaeological survey before any construction work could go ahead. Bearing in mind the conditions that's there, and if we could mitigate the issues in the area, I would support the mitigation. And I've moved the certain amendments, if you want, that we go to 2-storey throughout, we go to 4 housing developments instead of 5 to give proper garden space, and I think it's just too many houses. It's too overbearing in a small L-shaped site. Thanks.
Okay, so if we amend or go back to does anybody else want to say anything first?
I would agree with the flat roof buildings throughout Midlothian should be rejected totally. We can ask them to put a pitch on it and put solar panels on and heat the water up for all these flats.
Kath?
I agree. We're a wee rural area. That's heavy duty. I don't know the right phrases, but that's overbearing. There's far too many. I think there needs to be less housing.
But you're not
a tight squeeze. I agree with everything Bryden said, and I've listened to people at the Community Council as well. I don't think anyone's in favour of the development of this burden.
Chair, thanks. Just maybe to cover a couple of things in that case. In terms of the many issues that have been raised, a number to do with traffic and archaeology, there's the recommendations in here that they can be dealt with by condition, and yes, conditions need to be stuck to. I think, though, the issue is that, and certainly from the members who have spoken, there are it appears to me to be some fundamental concerns about what I would summarise as overdevelopment of the site. And many of the points raised, in addition to the design issues to do with the roofs, would suggest to me that there is, whilst, issues can be addressed in terms of design or whatever, I think if we're looking at a fundamental issue, which is overdevelopment of the site in terms of the number of units, but also fundamental differences in terms of design, 3-storey down to 2, pitched roofs instead of flat roofs, my view would be, Chair, that if that view is shared by a majority of the committee, then whilst I understand that officers can go back and negotiate, I think probably, in all honesty, you do better to, if that's your settled view, to refuse this planning application and let the applicants consider the points and the matters raised here by the committee and to come back with a scheme which is going to be more acceptable to the members.
Happy with that? Yeah.
I'm fine with that. That seems to be the question. Can I just ask you, and before you do that, is there some sort of change? Because we're starting to see many developments coming forward now with flat roofs that seem to be getting supported. And I'm obviously, if you look at the reason the proposed development accords with policies RP20 and DP2 of the adopted Midlothian local plan, that the layout and details appearance of the development will add to the interest of the street scene. Is there a change in fashion or something? Because flat roofs seem to go out and they now seem to be coming back in. And I think everybody that's been involved with them knows there's an inherent problem at times for them. But technology might have bypassed now, and I don't know, I'll bow, Joe, to... I'm not in the building trade, so I'll give way to your mere experience there. But you're starting to see this coming in more and more. Is this just a sort of fashion stuff? Because we're now starting to see several of these buildings coming back, and it's starting to worry me that they seem to be trying to put them in everywhere. And I've got to say that, in general, I agree with everything that's been said here, that whenever you have flat roofs, the buildings look 60s, they don't look nice, they're not aesthetically pleasing at all to me. And I understand that you can have several different people looking at a building and half of them will think it looks good and others won't. I'm sorry, but it just seems to be quite unanimous around this room that nobody thinks it's really that great of an appearance. And it's just wondering, has there something changed? Because for long enough we haven't seen flat roof buildings coming in, and that seems to be them coming back now.
Chair, and I think, probably the risk of being shouted down here, I mean, I understand, I'm not an expert on building construction, but that the technology of flat roofs is a lot better than it was. They've been notoriously bad for leaking and failing, but apparently that's a lot better than it ever was. But I'll take other people's views on that. In terms of the design aspect, I suppose what I'd say is that, yes, there are roof designs which are distinctive and traditional to areas, and in many cases that would be pitches of various angles of degree. There is a role probably somewhere for flat roof buildings and certain types of design, and I think the design of this one you have to take as a whole. Now, clearly you can take a view one way or other on the quality or the nature of design, but the nature of what that application is showing is a design concept which has a flat roof. That inherently is not necessarily wrong. So there is a place for the flat roof. Perhaps what obviously Councillor Milligan is alluding to, and understandably, is what sorts of design principles as an authority do you want to revise or bring forward? And if you feel that flat roof design is something of an exception, which would only be approved on exception, and you would tend to move towards traditional pitched roofs, that's something that can be built into reviewing the design guidance which we have as an authority. And probably one of the things to say, because I know this issue of flat roofs has come up 2 or 3 times in the last few months, it may be useful, convener, for us to take that back and look at the design guidance we have, perhaps refer to it perhaps a bit more in terms of the reports that are coming forward on schemes, and give the members more information, more assistance on that.
So, does the committee want to do that? Give the planners instructions that we...
Yeah, I second Bryden's proposal that we refuse it completely.
Okay, but what about this bit about the flat roof for ongoing?
Well, I personally don't think flat roofs are in keeping with the rest of Newton Grange. I don't know of any flat roofs in Newton Grange other than people's extensions onto homes. There's no flat roofs other than the school.
Okay, I propose we say to the planners then that we're not keen on flat roofs. If anybody's got anything else to say, we'll make that a condition of the plan. Okay?
We'll take that back. We'll certainly take back that message from the committee, and we'll look at the design guidance we've got as part of any review.
Right, Russell?
Could you record my dissent? Because I just think that is a recipe for disaster. I really do. Think it about that long and hard. How you look at that seriously, because I don't necessarily agree with some members saying that flat roof means high maintenance, because technology's moved leaps and bounds since there was the problems, perceived problems and real problems many years ago with flat roof. But a lot of people have flat roof extensions, so what are you going to say, well, that's all right then? I mean, it could be a recipe for disaster, and I think we should maybe just reflect on that. By all means, bring a report back to a future committee, but I think we should reflect on that, and we're making policy on the hoof here, and I just think maybe sometimes we should take a step back. If you want to refuse this application, by all means refuse it, but let's not make policy on the back of that. I think, let's get a report back, Chairman.
Okay, I take your point. Oh, the application's refused, I think, round the table, and we'll maybe just...
Yeah, just to be the application be refused for the primary reasons, I understand it, that the proposals are overdevelopment of the site, and maybe not to go into any more detail on that, but simply an overdevelopment, and that if applicants no doubt want to come back and have pre-application discussions on a further application with the officers, then they can do that.
Over that. Okay.